So why does mind identification cause suffering? Why does self-consciousness, positing a self, an apart self, a separate self, a self moving through time, why does that lead to suffering? Why is it so uncomfortable? Why is it so inherently uncomfortable? Well, a simple answer is this. Underneath all of this, your life, everything that seems to be animating your life, all the movements, the ups and downs and twists and turns and pains and sorrows and joys and all of it, there's just an energetic, right? There's an energy underneath all of it, of course. There's an energetic movement. And that energetic movement, of course, has its own ups and downs in one sense. And it doesn't really have direction in that way, but just to put words to it, it has moments of deep rest. There's moments of activity. There's moments of dynamism, moments of paradoxical movement, moments of high energy, moments of low energy, et cetera, et cetera. When the self-structure drops out, you feel this rather directly, and it can be very intense at first because for the first time, you're directly confronting. You're directly in contact with the fundamental misperception. The misperception that, this is actually hard to put into words. There's different ways to put it into words, but the misperception is something like this, that I need to do something about that energy, that there's something that needs to be done about it, right? This is even fundamental to the sense of self, actually, that there's some need to mitigate experience, mitigate, soften, control, direct, any of it, right? And that can be rather intense for a while. It will calm down, and at that stage of things, you have so much clarity that you really can't help but dissolve the fundamental dualistic constructs, right, that are there. They're not fundamental, but they're fundamental to the sense of self. And when the self sort of falls away, those dualistic constructs, they're just tendencies, are still around. And they will, with the self dissolving, a lot of it goes away, but there's still going to be some around, of course. And they are just in sharp relief now. You can see how absurd they are, and yet they're still there. So they will dissolve. But to go back and answer the original question, why does that cause suffering? Why does the sense of self cause suffering? Why does self-consciousness cause suffering? Why do thoughts and mind identification and identification with thoughts, why does it cause struggle, suffering, discord, dysphoria, anxiety, all of it, depression? Why? I think the simple truth can be stated this way. The energetics underneath all of it that we just kind of discussed, the energetic movements. When there's a belief that something needs to mitigate that experience at all, any experience that needs to adjust the experience, change the experience, take a position, then it's going to try to take a position, right? It has to take some kind of view or position in regard to those energetics. That can't be done because the energetics are non-dualistic and they're also eternal, not in space, not in time, right? And they are the totality in a sense. There's just that. There's just that. There's nothing outside of that. This becomes very clear after non-dual realization, and then even clearer after no self-realization. So to sort of rise up, this is like how ninth fetter can be interpreted, that restlessness is to rise up. That tendency to rise up can still be there, but there's nothing to rise up within, right? So going back to where we construct a self, this all happens automatically. You don't decide to do this. But when that rising up occurs, it's like, oh, the only way I can actually take a position is to be separate, is to be something, to be someone apart from everything, right? That's the initial and fundamental misperception. And then once you have that, it's like the dualistic constructs just start to build beyond that very quickly, and they multiply till it's like multiplicity, right? Everything is separate and discrete, and you're discrete from me, and I'm discrete from you, and you have your motivations, and I have my motivations, and everything just starts to get so fractured and divided up, appearing. And then you're always trying to take a position. Not only you, but the fragmented sense of identity that's in the mind, it's also trying to take positions against itself, against other minds, apparent minds, right? Theory of mind that comes online at 3 to 4 years old. All of that's happening, and it's all ultimately and fundamentally trying to move against the natural energetics of the moment. That's what's happening. We're literally fighting life all the time. Adyashanti has a beautiful way of saying it. Underneath all of this, underneath all of the hubbub and the awakenings and all of the structures of identity and so forth, there's really just this fundamental sense of no. I think he says it's kind of in the gut, right? And it often may be felt there. But there's this sense of no to everything. No to you, no to me, no to life, no to awakening, no to suffering. Just no, 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 no. That's exactly what it feels like. That's a really good description, an animated description of what it feels like to be in a world where we're pushing on everything. We're pulling on everything. We're always trying to adjust and mitigate experience. We're just not okay with experience. We're not okay with life as it is. Now, what's really weird is with layers of identity based on thought, we can be completely disconnected from the fact that that's even happening, right? That's what we call suffering. That what we call discontent. That what we call unsatisfactoriness. Again, as I've said, that's the first stage of awakening, is to realize the unsatisfactoriness, to realize you're actually suffering. But with layers of identity, we don't even know that, right? Recently, I talked to a friend, very, very smart guy, and a pretty emotionally healthy guy and a sharp dude and all. And he said, when I first met you, I trusted you, but when you said everyone suffers, he said, I didn't believe it because I thought I don't suffer. Like, he was truly convinced he doesn't suffer. And he said, he goes, I didn't even consider that you were right about that because I just knew I didn't. And he said, now 2 years later, I realized, oh my God, I do suffer actually, right? And does that mean that Angelo caused somebody to suffer by telling them they're suffering and it's suggestive? No, it's because he was able to really feel into what's happening inside and go, oh my gosh, I've covered up my suffering with identities, right? With the identity of being the one that, whatever you are, the one that works hard, the one that is really smart, the one that can figure anything out, and so we actually divide ourselves even further when we divide ourselves from our own suffering, from our own fundamental sense that I'm pushing and pulling on life all the time, that I'm not okay with life, that life is not okay, that there's something in our psyche that actually believes that and acts on that all the time, right? So again, that's early on, that's before an awakening that you start to realize that. But it's also the first noble truth of Buddhism, life is suffering, right? So it's critical to see that. But once you start to recognize that, oh my God, there is a lot of suffering around, right? And not only am I suffering, like kind of everybody's suffering, even though many people are really divided from their own suffering. And a whole other dimension is if you're a very empathic person, then you feel everybody's suffering and you don't even realize it a lot of times. You're just really just internalizing all the suffering around you. And it's hard to understand that because cognitively you look out and go, no, well, people seem fine. They seem fine. They seem to know what to do. They seem happy. They're masking though, right? Everybody's masking. So that's a whole other dimension to this when you start to wake up and realize, like, holy shit, I'm totally empathic and I pick up everybody's suffering around me all the time, which is also an aside to the main point of this. And the main point is ultimately why it causes suffering to be self-conscious, to be a separate self or perceive ourselves as a separate self moving through time and space is because we're always taking a position. We're always pushing and pulling. We're always trying to separate ourselves out from life. And if you start to feel into what I'm saying, you realize none of that can actually happen. You're trying to create the impossible. You're trying to create separation where separation doesn't exist. And you're not looking closely enough to see that it's impossible. If you look closely enough to see that it's impossible, you're awake. And if you just keep looking, it'll all dissolve. That's all this is about. It's very simple. It's very simple. And I guess, that's why I really think there's truth in all the different religions, right? Hidden in these religions, there's the awakened ones, and the awakened ones have spoke about the truth. And if you can sort of tease that out from all of the cultural and historical and thousands of years of time span that has distorted the words and see what's actually there, you realize it's true. Like all religions at the core somewhere have a realized human being somewhere, or more than one, right? But with that said, Buddhism to me is probably the clearest. Like it's just from the beginning to the end. The first noble truth being life is suffering. It's like, well, why would they say that? Why would Buddha say that? What a negative thing to say. Well, no, it's not. It's actually recognizing something that's authentic. It's the first step in true authenticity. Like I am suffering. I feel uncomfortable most of or all of the time. That's just honesty. Oh, I don't suffer. No. But I drink all the time. Pretty much every day, but I'm not suffering, right? Well, why do you drink? Why do you think you drink? and things like that, substance abuse and all these things help us. They help us build these artificial experiences that divide us from our own suffering, right? They numb the body, numb the mind, and so forth. So anyway, this is kind of a little bit tangential, but underneath it all, the truth is all we're doing is we're trying to take a position in regard to reality that doesn't exist. And when you try to create something that doesn't exist, or you try to move against the totality that you can't move against, ultimately, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. It's going to feel like a lot of discord. And then you really understand what suffering actually is, right? Suffering isn't something you deserve. It's not even a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. Suffering is just, it's a gift from the universe handing you a message going, hey, you may not be seeing things clearly. That's a very simple way of putting it. Like, it sounds so romantic if the universe hands you a gift like that. It doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like hell. A lot of times it feels really miserable to feel that kind of suffering. And at the same time, it really is a gift, because what the message also says is, and you can find your way out of it, right? That's the Four Noble Truths, right? There's a way out of that. That's the point. That's why I do this. If there wasn't a way out of this, there would be no point in opening my mouth. But there is a way, of course. And that's the key. That's what we're talking about. No matter what spiritual teachers seem to be talking about, no matter how contemporary it is and how much they filter out spirituality and the historical contexts and all of it, no matter what, if you're not talking about ending suffering or getting to the root of suffering, then I don't know what the hell spirituality is about. I don't even know what it's about. It's just more of the same to me. It's more delusion. So that's what it's about, ultimately, in my opinion, in my view, and others' view who have found their way out of suffering. So, yeah, that's it. Long and short of it.